Well, what's the crack? My name's Paul and I live in a tiny house on wheels. I built this tiny house on wheels as an experiment to see if someone who was a total amateur could design and build their own shelter, and could that shelter be a success? Could I make it affordable, beautiful, functional and environmentally sound? So it's 180 square foot. The room breakdown is there's a kind of lounge area, this open end which I'm sitting in, and there's a kitchenette which leads to a toilet and a shower, and then upstairs there's a sleeping loft. So it's about 180 square foot when you include the sleeping loft. It's 6 meters long, it's 2.5 meters wide, or just there under, and it is about 4 meters tall. And I've been living in it for about 1.5 years now, and today I'd like to discuss with you whether tiny living and living in this particular house is good or bad or brilliant or terrible, or just generally what the crack with tiny living is, and whether that might be an option for you or not. So is it any good or not? Is living in a tiny house rubbish, or is it class? Lucky for me, it is class. No, I absolutely love living in this house. I don't really have any major complaints. I've got some minor complaints, but nothing like it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. And I'm surprised about that. I thought it would be, I knew I'd take to living in a tiny space, but I didn't think it would be as easy as it is, or as breezy as it's been. Like I'm 1.5 years in it now, and when I went to make this video, I was racking my brains to find things to moan about. And anyone who knows me well will know that I'm very vocal about things that I moan about. Like I'm a moan bike, I'll give out about shit that bothers me. Like it just doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It doesn't feel too small. It's the warmest house I've ever lived in. It's really easy to warm, it's really efficient to warm because it's a small space. It gets clean as quick as it gets messy, so you have minimal cleaning time. Like there's a limit to how messy you can get, and you can hoover and mop the place in like less than half an hour, you know, it's just done. That really suits me because I'm like a really messy clean freak. I like my space to be clean and organised, but also I'm just like a thunder and bull when I'm eating food or whatever I'm doing. I just make a total mess, so that works out quite well in my favour. There are a few problems with my actual particular tiny house, and the biggest one of those would be that it isn't finished. Like this is a total work in progress. So I moved into this 1.5 years ago, and when I moved in, it was really just a shell. It was painted, had my electric sorted, had my plumbing done, had my gas in. I had a makeshift kitchen built, which I still have, because the problem with a good temporary solution is that it can often just become a bad long-term solution. But it's just a hobbled together table essentially, made out of like rough 2x2 and half a sheet of 12mm Malaysian ply. And unfortunately for me, it works really well and it fits my needs. So, and it was lovely and cheap, much like a lot of the house. But yeah, there are problems with living in a tiny space that's unfinished, and I suppose the biggest one of those is changing the house between modes. So if I'm working on the house, say, and I want to frame a door perhaps, or build a new kitchen, which I haven't got around to doing yet, very quickly every available space in the house is covered with timber and construction materials and tools and all the rest of it. And then say I want to eat in the middle of that, which I definitely do because I'm always eating. Like you just can't, there is no space to eat. Where do you prepare your lunch or your dinner or whatever it is? Like it doesn't take that kind of dual function particularly well. It can be between modes. Like you could turn it to yoga mode and you move the furniture down into the walkway of the kitchen, and you've got like an open space here to do that. Or you can turn it into work mode where the desk folds up, or you can use the standing desk or whatever. Like it can do that kind of stuff well, but going between construction mode and living mode is quite challenging. You kind of need to just box off a good chunk of time to do any serious construction work. And the other issue with it being unfinished is that it's just a dream for procrastination. Like anyone who works from home knows that procrastination is something you have to kind of conquer as you do. Procrastination in general can be a massive challenge, but when you live in a house that you're responsible for building and all of that is just staring at you in the face the whole time, it's very easy to alienate the thing you're supposed to be doing in place of building the house, because that's also the thing you're supposed to be doing. Anyone who's even like gets like mad into cleaning when they're procrastinating instead of the thing they're supposed to be doing, you know, will be able to kind of empathize with that. Like it's the same thing times 10, and that can also cause issues when you're trying to chill out. Like if you're watching a film and then your gaze just kind of goes off to that corner of the house that looks really rough, and you're just like, it's staring you back in the face, and you're like, I really need to sort that out, like, you know what I mean, the state of it. So yeah, those things aren't ideal. They're not unique to tiny living, they're unique to moving into a tiny house that you built yourself but didn't finish, essentially. Other problems I've had, I suppose, are minor, but I've had moisture problems, so I've made this house airtight, and obviously it's really small, so it gets humid really quickly. If you're building a house airtight, you've got to have a mechanical heat recovery ventilation, which I don't. This problem is born out of negligence more so than ignorance, but not exclusively one or the other. I knew I needed to put one in. They cost about $1,000 or more, and I just didn't want to do that or spend that money at the time. I had budgeted it, but by the time it was towards the end of my build that I would have been sticking that in, and I was like, maybe I just won't spend like $2,000 on that thing. Maybe I'll just see how I get on, or try cracking a window. So I bought the cheapest, crappiest one I could find, and it turns out it's cheap and it's crap. A good, like basically what a heat recovery ventilation will do is it'll take air from outside, swap it with the air from inside, and you won't lose any heat in the process. And a proper one will also monitor the air quality, so the carbon dioxide and maybe some other stuff as well as the humidity, and it'll self-regulate. It'll turn on and off and ramp up and down as it needs to keep your space at the optimal level of humidity and air quality that it needs to be. The one I got doesn't do any of that stuff. It's basically a two-way fan with a little core in it. It supposedly changes the heat. I don't notice the temperature dropping significantly when I've had it on for a while, but I don't really leave it on for long either, because it's loud and annoying, which definitely doesn't work in a small space. So yeah, that's not ideal. But again, unique to my tiny house, not all tiny houses. Other problems are the door opens in, which is like a disaster for design of a small space. You shouldn't do that. But I never wanted one. I just kind of screwed up there. I thought it was an open out, and when it arrived, it wasn't. I got it secondhand, and a mate picked it up for me, and then when it came, I was like, oops. So I just went with it. Trying to find a second-hand open outdoor has been next to near impossible. So I'm stuck with it for now, and look, what are you going to do? I'll change it eventually. It's on the list. And then the final issue would be that the house can rock in the wind when there's high winds. Well, high gust speeds more so than high winds. Like it's a tall house. It's 4 meters tall and 6 meters long. So that creates a 4x6 wall essentially at the front of the house. A little bit less than that because there's a pitch of the roof to factor in, and then obviously there's about 500 mil to the ground from the bottom of the trailer chassis. But yeah, like if there's a high wind or a high gust, the house will rock from side to side. Because it's a house on wheels, it's sitting on wheels the whole time. Those wheels, between those wheels and the structure is suspension, of course, like you would have in a car or whatever. So it can't be taken off that. That's the way the load is designed to be dispersed. It has to go through the suspension, into the axles, onto the wheels and onto the ground. That's the way it works. If you were to put it on blocks, you could risk damaging the chassis, and it's just not meant to do that. So that's not ideal. It's like being on a boat. I'm a really light sleeper. I've had friends staying over, they don't even notice it, but it would wake me up the odd time, especially the first time it happened. Like the sleeping loft is 2.5 meters from the ground, so it's at the top of the lever from where the house moves basically. So yeah, it scared the crap out of me the first couple of times, and the odd time if the wind is strong enough and it gets a good gust and a knock in the night, I will think the house is coming down and like wake up and sweat, like freaking out. So it's not as bad as it sounds, I swear. But yeah, I mean, there's a way to fix that. You could put in, I wish I had designed in kind of like a way to tie cross ropes to it, or cross cables for high storms. Or what you could do is do that from the bottom, putting in ground screws and anchoring it to the ground with some steel cable that would form an X. So I should do that, but yeah, it's on the list. Overall, like I said, I love living in this house. It doesn't feel like a sacrifice, and honestly, I'd highly recommend it. I built this house because I wanted to live a better life. I didn't want to work for the man for the rest of my life. I certainly didn't want to get a mortgage. I wanted to live a life that was going to be debt-free and environmentally friendly, and when I looked at the options that were out there, I just thought there must be a better way. This has worked out really well for me. I'm incredibly lucky and incredibly grateful to have been in as privileged a position I was to attempt this, and even more lucky and grateful to have been able to pull it off, and I do genuinely believe you could be too. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't impossible, and I think with the right preparation and training, anyone could pull this off. It's not going to be for everyone. I'm not saying it's the answer to the housing crisis or the climate crisis, but it is an option, and if you think it's the type of option you could be into, it really does merit exploring more. I'd recommend you do a cost-benefit analysis, and I'll include a template for one below which will show you what you stand to lose by not doing this. I recommend you do a deeper dive on YouTube, and if you've got any questions or comments or queries, or you'd like to know more, feel free to comment below. Feel free to reach out to me direct. I'm on Instagram at The Small Change Movement. You can just email me, hey what's up at smallchange.ie. I'd love to hear from you, and yeah, thanks so much. Do be sure to subscribe. I'm going to be doing more videos about tiny living and how to build your own tiny house and all this kind of crack. And yeah, thanks so much, and I'll catch you again. Good luck.